Hello YouTube and welcome back to a new 50 market update. I'm Stefan, full-time day trader and co-founder of 15min, and today I'm going to explain you what I expect next for BTC, Ethereum, the altcoins, and above all above the stock markets for the coming week. The week was very interesting with the FOMC meeting and we are now in a very interesting sideways range. I also will explain you why market makers are keeping us in this sideways range before breaking out and what this could mean for the general markets. So if you don't want to miss something, let's jump into the charts and I will explain you what I expect next. Welcome 50min to a new market update from my side. After last week's FOMC meeting, this week was very interesting overall, and I will give you now my insights what I expect from next week and why above all the current range is really interesting for the next few weeks. So let's jump into the charts and I will explain you what I expect next. First of all, let's talk about the last FOMC meeting. I already shared into the macro section my current thoughts about the Powell situation and the general situation with the T-bill purchases from the Fed. If you don't had read this, please read this. This is very important and summarize the whole FOMC meeting. What is important now is Powell more dovish or hawkish, and in general, is the new T-bill purchases quantitative easing or not? I will put the links from the articles below this video so you can read it again to understand the whole market even better now. But overall, let's now jump into BTC. We can see that we are still below the first control point. We are again in the 3-day chart and we can see that there is still no candle above this very important control point, which means this is still a resistance. So the first control point is still not overclaimed, which means we're still in the bearish scenario, which means that a further drop into the 75k region is still possible. What is also very important is that the 25% order book depth is still very positive. So that means, we can see it also in the screen, 25% at the current price, there are more bids compared to asks above us. This is a very bullish sign because, as already said, something like this is very important for larger bottom building. As we can see at the tariff flow earlier this year, we also had a very significant 25% order book depth area before we had another leg up. So this is very good to see. What is particularly interesting to see is that the 10% order book depth is jumping very hardly. So we are now basically in a very weird range, to be honest. We didn't overcome the 94k, so short term technically this will be now interesting, the 94k and again the 90k area. So we're basically in this range since earlier this week. We didn't saw a drop below the 90k and not a push above the 94k. But what is really interesting to see is that the 10% order book depth is every time when we are getting into the to the 94k region, it's going very deep in negative, and when we are going into the 90k area, it's going very high in positive. And this is every time the same, and this is very interesting to see, which means that market makers are trying to hold us in this very tight sideways range. This is very interesting to see because we are now in the last month of the year. December is mostly bullish in the years. Also in the stock market, market makers and market participants are waiting a Christmas rally, and market makers are trying at BTC to keep us in this tight range. But for what is this? Why are market makers doing this? So first of all, they want to create liquidity clusters below and above us. We are here again at the Bitcoin heat map, and we can see that there are many significant liquidation clusters below and above us. So the first one would be here directly below the 90k area and above us the 95k area. So basically such sideways ranges are here to put a very deep pressure on BTC for market makers to grab liquidity. Question will be now, where will market makers hunt the liquidity? Because we can see that we have very large clusters below us until the 80k area and above us until the 100k area. So basically, if we're going now into my Bitcoin trade again, it would mean, okay, can we react bearish and going again for long liquidations, or can we overclaim the first control point and pushing higher into the 100k, gaining more bullish momentum again? So this will be very interesting to see which direction we're going. To be honest, it's very hard to say in which direction we will go, because for this one we need also take a look at the general SPX 500, so at the stock market. Many of you know that BTC in general is coupled with SPX, but in the last few months we didn't catch the bullish vibes, only the bearish ones, and therefore we need to also watch on this one. And here's also very interesting, we didn't really overcame it sustainable at $6,880 level, as I explained also in the FOMC live call. There was the FOMC meeting. After this one we had a bad earnings start on Oracle, which pushed the index down further. Then we pushed again into the all-time high nears, and after this one the Broadcom earnings and Oracle rumors that the cooperation with OpenAI is not that really good as expected, and they're pushing restrictions further away, so from 2026 to 2028, which also lead to a significant sell-off at the AI sector, which leads to another sell-off also at the SPX. So also here we didn't overcome the resistance point. So here it will be interesting just to talk about the SPX. Can we overclaim it sustainable? If yes, I already explained it here, new all-time highs are coming, because this would lead to a further Christmas rally, and above all a further end year rally. If we can't overclaim it, the first important point would be the short-term CTL sell pressure level at the 6,745 level. So therefore it will be interesting, can we hold it or not? If not, we are dropping further below, and there is a big problem, which means that CTA algos will sell. So basically, as long as we are above this level, CTA algos are more in the buying pressure. So there is steady buying upwards, but if we lose this level, CTAs will reduce their positions, reduce risk, and pushing stocks away, which means that the SPX could lead to more sell pressure. Why do I explain this for you? Because, as already said at the beginning, if BTC is still coupled with the SPX, but more on the bearish days. So if SPX is bearish and BTC is bullish, we hadn't seen this since weeks now. And so we need to also have this scenario in our background. And if we can't see overcame at the SPX, I can well imagine that we are going here lower for these targets, which means that we are going first into the 80K long liquidation cluster. And if the SPX also loses the CTA algo pressure level, so more CTAs are selling, we can also drop into the 75K region further down, because this long liquidation cluster is still getting bigger and bigger, because we see this SPX is pumping, but BTC is still not, so more leverage is coming into the markets. This is more like revenge trading what's happening now, and market makers are still wanting to keep them in the range before also the SPX shows a clear sign. If we can overcome it and hold it sustainable, it will be also interesting for BTC if we can get these bullish momentum also. If we can get the bullish momentum, I also expect that we can overclaim the 94K region and pushing higher above here. So which would mean that we can overcome the first control point at BTC and seeing more bullish power again. Therefore, we will definitely hit the first liquidations in the 95K with the second target of the 100K region. This would be my plan if the SPX can overclaim it so stable. That BTC is now outperforming from nothing, while the stock market is keeping calm. So to be honest, I don't expect this at the moment. I mean, the SPX and BTC is still in a very, very important movements, and we're still coupled with the SPX. So if SPX is bearish, I can't really explain why BTC should see a bullish momentum. Therefore, I still expect that once the SPX is bearish, BTC is also bearish. If the SPX is bullish and we can overcome this $6,880 level sustainable, I also can expect it for BTC. Yes, we didn't saw a really much outperformance from BTC, but I can really imagine if we can enter a Christmas rally at the SPX, I also think that BTC will follow it. But for this one, we need to watch the 94K. Can we overclaim this one also? If not, their underperformance is still ongoing, which means we still need to be very careful with long positions. So if we can overclaim at the SPX, we need to watch at the 94K region at BTC. So basically my plan is in this tight range. I watch very closely the stock market and if we dropping into this level or not. And therefore I will keep a close eye, as already said, at the 90K with the first control point, and with the 94K with claiming above this region to gain more bullish momentum. Because there is again a weekend action. We are again at the weekend range. because of the CME gap that we are creating during the weekend. So our CME close is at around 90k, which means that we should open on Monday near the 90k, or we are creating again a CME gap at BTC. So also this one will be important. If market makers are manipulating the markets on the weekend, and we may see a punch above this region again, so maybe again into the 94k region, or dropping below because market makers want to create more fear into the markets. Therefore, we need to watch at the CME gap. So if we see such a move on Sunday, like the last few weeks, we need to see, okay, CME gap, we created this one. Basically, it's just a matter of time before we are seeing these prices again. So I would not be very much in trouble if we can see such a very manipulated Sunday move again. If we're seeing something, I would not really enter into this direction where it's heading, because we would create a CME gap, and therefore we would definitely go on Monday or Tuesday again into this range again. So basically the range is really hard, and also for me it's hard to trade, because also altcoins are in general more volatile, but we will come there later. Also at Ethereum the plan is still the same, but here is also very interesting to see is that Ethereum is outperforming BTC pretty much, because we can see the high time frame support in the 3k area is holding pretty well, while BTC is still struggling with the 90k area. So which means that Ethereum is still outperforming Bitcoin, like I already said it last week. So this is very interesting to see, and it's also a big problem into the markets, because we are in a tight range. We are getting liquidation clusters above and below us, and meanwhile Ethereum is outperforming, which means that market participants are betting on an altcoin while we are in a risk-off mode. This means we need to be careful of a liquidation event. So for me, this shows that market participants are again running into altcoins like Ethereum to gain more profits, while BTC is in this boring sideways range. So for me, this also is very important that the altcoins, I'm still more bearish. So I'm not longing any altcoins. And with this outperformance, it shows me that it's possible that we're seeing an altcoin liquidation event again. So not like big like as a few weeks ago with $20 billion long liquidation, but it's possible that we're seeing again a 1 to 2 billion, where altcoins in general sees another 10 to 50% drop during a few minutes, because that means market participants are betting again on risky assets while we are in general risk off mode. I mean, BTC in this is boring sideways range where we're getting above and below us long liquidation clusters, and Ethereum is running upwards. So this is a perfect puzzle that we saw in the last few weeks. To be honest, I don't know when this happens, but it's possible that we're seeing another liquidation event. So be careful with your altcoin long trades. And if you're longing altcoins, please use a stop loss with low leverage, because this is not a bullish sign for the altcoins. Very important to understand. But overall, BTC here will still have the upper hand. If we're seeing pushing above the 94k, I also expect for Ethereum a push upwards before we're seeing a leg down at Ethereum again. The next target, if we're going higher, will be again the 3.4k region, and if we can rise above this one, the 4k region also follow it. But to be honest, as higher we are pushing, the larger will be the long liquidation event that we would face if market makers are going for the liquidations. If we see a drop further below at BTC, like because of the bearish SPX, Ethereum would also be below the 3k, which would go hand in hand with the long liquidation event. So this is basically my plan for Ethereum. Not really has changed. I'm still very pessimistic about the current Ethereum movements, but yeah, I mean, it's understandable because we saw the last few months moves. The total free chart, the altcoin chart, is also, it's really interesting, because if we can see this one with Ethereum, the altcoins are still struggling with the 50% wick fill area. So overall, market participants are betting more on Ethereum and very specific altcoins, not on the broad sector, because overall the total free chart is still very underperforming. So to come back to the liquidation events, if we see someone, I still expected that we're seeing them also on the altcoins, because we're still below the 50% wick fill area, and the 100% wick fill area at the $750 billion mark is still not touched. Also, when we're here not seeing a huge outperformance, it's still possible, even if we are below a resistance. Just to explain it for you here again. Above all here, market participants, as already said, are betting on specific altcoins, so not on the broad sector, and also the Ethereum, because we can see that we are still rising while Bitcoin is still struggling with this region. So basically, this is my current outlook for the total free chart, and in general, the altcoins, as already said, still bearish. I'm shorting now since weeks and months altcoins, and I still will continue this until BTC finds a clear bottom. Also, the BTC dominance shows a very interesting picture, and to be honest, there is not really much that I can say. We're still in up and down because of the general sideways range from BTC. Important would be here that we are holding the 59% region to overall have still a bullish picture. As already said, for me, it's still better that we first see a strength at BTC only, and then the altcoins will follow, because if BTC can't perform while altcoins and Ethereum run up, a liquidation event will be coming, because this is not healthy for the markets. So overall, it will be important that we are holding the 59% area also for the general healthiness of the markets. So basically, as I explained it, to summarize it again, the $6,880 level will be important at the SPX, as already explained in the last few weeks at my SPX 500 short-term plan. This region will be very important. Also, the new CTA sell pressure level for December and early of January, the 6,745 region will be important if we see more pressure in the stock market or not. This will be also then important for BTC if we can overclaim the 94K or seeing a further leg down below. Very, very interesting. Overall, here with the short liquidation clusters, we're in a very tight range. It's hard to predict in which direction we will break up or break down. We will need to see it next week where the SPX is heading, and if we're seeing a bullish momentum, if BTC can also follow it. It's a really hard December. I never experienced such a very volatile December for now, where there was not really bullish momentum, and above all, we are in the bottom range. So this is very, very important, and I will keep a very close eye on it. But to understand this again, I'm not closing my BTC position. If we drop further down, I will accumulate in this range again. So my basically my Bitcoin trade is still the same. I'm not changing anything on that. I still expect that we are holding the 75K and seeing new highs next year. We are still on the edge for in a bear market, but for me, I still don't expect it. So for me, I'm still bidding in the 75K region to hold it next year. I still expect new all-time highs. That's my current plan for the coming week. I'm very hyped. I'm keeping the SPX and BTC on these levels, very close eye on it. And if something changes or we're seeing again a general bullish or bearish momentum shift, I will let you know here in 15min as well. So I'm hyped for the coming week. I will keep you updated, and we'll see us at the next market update. That's it for today's 15min market update. It will be a very interesting next week if we can overclaim the $6,880 level at the SPX, and if we can overcome it, what will happen with BTC. If you don't want to miss further updates like this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more updates. I'm very hyped for the coming week, and we will see us at the next market update next week. See you soon.